You don't belong to this community, ape!
This fake HOA cop slapped my mother and held her jaw when I walked into the diner, actually gripping her face, forcing her to look at him while he humiliated her in front of everyone. Her back was pressed into the booth, one hand frozen halfway off the table, coffee spilling as the cup tipped over. She wasn't fighting him. She wasn't yelling. She was just stunned, eyes wide, breath shallow, trying to understand how a stranger thought he had the right to touch her. And he was talking while he did it, calling her an ape, saying she didn't belong, saying people like her ruined communities. The diner had gone quiet in that special way it does when everyone is watching something terrible and hoping someone else steps in. That someone was me. I had just come home from deployment. I wanted to surprise my mom. I was halfway through the door when I saw his hand on her face. That image burned itself into my head. Before we go any further, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. To understand why a man wearing an HOA vest thought he could assault my mother in public, you need the backstory. My mom has lived in that town her entire life. Same house, same routines, same diner every Tuesday morning. She worked 2 jobs for decades, paid her bills, kept her head down, and never asked anyone for favors. She belonged there long before the HOA ever existed. The problem started when the neighborhood got upgraded. New developments, new rules, and a new HOA president, Karen, who decided the community needed to look a certain way. Clean, uniform, quiet, younger. People like my mother didn't fit the image she was selling. The complaints started small: porch decorations, old furniture, the way my mom dressed when she went to the store. Nothing ever violated actual bylaws, but that didn't matter. The point wasn't rules, it was pressure. They wanted her gone. Karen made that clear in meetings, said things like some residents are no longer aligned with our vision, suggested relocation, suggested selling, suggested she'd be happier somewhere else. My mom ignored it. That's when they sent muscle, fake enforcement officers, black vests, radios, big attitudes, men who confused intimidation with authority. One of them took a particular interest in my mom, always showing up when she was alone, always talking down to her, always reminding her she was on thin ice. I was overseas when most of that happened. I only knew pieces. She didn't want to worry me. She said it was fine, said she could handle herself. She shouldn't have had to. When I walked into that diner and saw his hand on her face, every piece of that history snapped into focus. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was exactly where their harassment had been leading. The HOA cop finally noticed me standing there. He looked up, still holding my mother's jaw, and opened his mouth to say something. He never got the chance, because in that moment, he wasn't dealing with a quiet old woman anymore. He was dealing with her son, and I had just come home. I stepped between them. My presence alone made him loosen his grip, just a little, like his brain finally caught up to the fact that someone else had entered the moment. My mother's jaw slipped free, and she recoiled, shaking, hands clutching the edge of the table like it was the only solid thing left in the room. The fake HOA cop straightened up and turned toward me, chest puffed out, rehearsed authority snapping into place. "You need to back up," he said. "This woman stole property from the diner. A lie. Sloppy. Desperate. She took utensils," he added quickly, gesturing vaguely toward the table. "That's theft. HOA enforcement has the right." He didn't get to finish the sentence. My fist landed on his jaw. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flashy. It was clean, heavy, and final. The kind of punch that doesn't make noise so much as it makes reality rearrange itself. His mouth snapped shut mid-word, teeth clicking hard, head whipping sideways as his feet stumbled to catch up with what his skull had just learned. He staggered back into a table. Plates shattered. Someone screamed. I stepped in again. "You don't touch her," I said quietly. He tried to recover, tried to square up, tried to lift his hands like he still had options. He swung, wide and angry, all ego and no control. I slipped it without thinking and drove my elbow into his ribs. I felt something give. He gasped, the sound ugly and wet, and folded forward. I didn't stop. I grabbed the front of his vest and slammed him down onto the floor between the booths. His head bounced once, hard. The fake radio on his shoulder skittered away, crackling useless noise across the tiles. I hooked his arm and twisted, pinning it behind his back. He screamed now. Real fear, real pain. And I drove a knee into his side. Once, twice. Each hit knocking the air out of him in sharp bursts until he could barely breathe. "You assaulted my mother," I said, leaning close enough for him to hear me clearly over the chaos. "In public. In front of witnesses." He tried to say something. It came out as a whimper. I stood, hauled him up just long enough to put him back down, hard, face first this time. His body went slack, his head lolled to the side, eyes unfocused, jaw already swelling where the first punch had landed. He didn't get back up. The diner was frozen. People stood with phones raised, hands over mouths, shock written across every face. Coffee dripped onto the floor. Someone had called 911. I could hear it in the distance, faint but growing. I turned back to my mother. She was crying now, quietly, shoulders shaking. I knelt in front of her and took her hands, grounding her, checking her face where he'd grabbed her. "I'm here," I said. "I've got you." She nodded, still stunned, still trying to process what had just happened. Behind me, the fake HOA cop didn't move. By the time sirens cut through the silence and red and blue lights washed across the diner windows, the story was already written, on camera, on faces, on the man unconscious on the floor. And as officers pushed through the door and took control of the scene, one thing was obvious to everyone watching. This wasn't going to end with a warning. This was going to end with consequences. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe, because the story is only going to get better. Two cruisers slid to a stop outside the diner, lights flashing against the windows, red and blue washing over frozen faces and spilled coffee. Officers came in with hands up, voices firm, scanning the room and taking in the scene in seconds. The unconscious man on the floor in an HOA vest, broken plates, shaken patrons, my mother still trembling in the booth. I stood up slowly and raised my hands before anyone asked. "I'm the one who called," I said. "He assaulted my mother." An officer nodded and moved past me to secure the man on the floor. Another crouched to check his pulse. He groaned, barely, jaw already swelling to the size of a fist. Paramedics were called in immediately. The questions started, but they didn't take long. The diner manager pointed to the ceiling. "We've got cameras, multiple angles, audio." 3 different customers stepped forward without being prompted. One had recorded the entire thing on her phone, starting with the slap, the slurs, the grip on my mother's face. Another had caught the aftermath. A third had video of him bragging earlier, pacing the aisle, talking about cleaning up the neighborhood. The officers asked for my ID. I handed it over. One of them paused, glanced at it, then looked back at me, measured, respectful. "Sir," he said quietly, handing it back, "thank you for your service. Stay put." They separated my mother and me gently. A female officer sat with her, wrapped a jacket around her shoulders, and listened as she told her side through tears. When the officer asked about prior contact, my mom hesitated, then pulled out her phone, text messages, emails, photos of notices taped to her door, messages from the HOA president, Karen, that were impossible to misunderstand. "You don't fit our community. We're tired of your kind dragging property values down. Apes like you belong somewhere else. Leave now, and this all goes away." There were fake fines too, dozens of them, each one threatening liens, eviction, legal action, none of them valid, all of them meant to scare her into leaving. The officers' expressions hardened as they scrolled. Outside, paramedics loaded the fake HOA cop onto a stretcher. Hospital records later showed a fractured jaw, 2 broken ribs, and a concussion. He was discharged into custody 2 weeks later. The charges stacked up quickly. Felony assault, false imprisonment, impersonating a law enforcement officer, hate crime enhancements, harassment and intimidation of a protected person. His bail was denied. The footage made sure of that. So did the witnesses. So did the messages. Karen didn't even try to deny it when investigators came knocking. Her phone told the rest of the story. Coordination, instructions, encouragement. She'd sent him there. She'd told him to make an example. She was charged too. Conspiracy, harassment, civil rights violations, fraud. The HOA dissolved within weeks. Board members resigned, assets were frozen, lawyers circled. My mother didn't have to leave. Instead, the diner held a fundraiser for her. The town showed up. People apologized for not stepping in sooner, for looking away. In the end, the fake HOA cop got 15 years in state prison, mandatory anger management, permanent ban from any security or enforcement work, and a criminal record that would follow him forever. Karen got 8 years in prison, $25,000 in fines, a lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board, and a civil judgment she'll be paying off for the rest of her life. My mother still goes to that diner every Tuesday. She sits in the same booth, and every time I visit, I'm reminded of one simple truth. Fake authority only works when good people stay quiet. And that's how a man pretending to be an HOA cop learned the difference between power and accountability. What do you think, folks? Did I do the right thing? Or did I do what any son would have done in that situation? What would you have done if a fake HOA cop slapped your mom? I would love to know. The end.